Hello and welcome to the first installment of the Carbon Now QGIS editing and quality control video series. For the premiere video, I'd like for us to go over some of the fields that were assigned to us, to you as practice work after the initial 2 trainings. For part 1, let's go over the guidelines for what ANU wants us to remove from field boundaries. For part 2, I'll quickly go over how I graded the work, and then for part 3, we'll go through some examples that I encountered when checking the work. Don't worry, I'm not calling anybody's work out in particular. We're just going to go through them together. All right, part 1. Here's what ANU doesn't want. These standards are outlined by Vera, our carbon accreditation overseers. So trees and tree canopies, obviously we can't sample ground that isn't farmed, and if the ground has been cleared less than 10 years before the current crop year, we cannot use that ground either. Those are the rules, I don't make them. Drainage. Another thing that Vera wants us to remove, even if the ground is actually farmed there, we want to remove any ground that shows obvious signs of heavy drainage, be it the result of a terrace or ditch or a draining low-lying area of the field. Low water collecting areas of the field, such as playas or seasonal pools, also need to be removed. These are easy to see, but must be confirmed across multiple forms of imagery. Some imagery shows these better than others though, so use your judgment. We also want to remove any area that is consistently muddy, as these areas perform poorly when they are harvested, except for rice. Rice loves the mud. In the case of rice, we would just remove the levees and terraces because they don't grow crop there. Areas of consistent and concentrated very poor growth. I know, yeah, it's a mouthful, but every word in that phrase is important. The areas have to be consistent, showing that they have very poor growth over seasons and years. Concentrated, as in an area that can be defined, so not the entire field. And the growth has to be very poor, so as in the soil is showing there when the rest of the field is covered with crop canopy. This can sometimes be from muddy low spots in the field or from compaction or whatever the case may be. If it's across multiple imagery sources, we will remove it. Areas of excessive compaction. Lots of areas can get compacted, and it's difficult to judge compaction from the overhead view that we have when editing. That's called the nadir perspective, NADIR. So our best judgment must be used when we remove them. They're generally around entry and exit areas of the field. They can also be turn rows, areas called headlands by some, which are places where the edge of the field follows an uneven path guided by a natural boundary of some sort, like a fence or a ditch. We also take out pivot access roads for the same reason, even if it hasn't been used in the current crop year. Obstacles. Pivots, roads, buildings, pumps, wind turbines, telephone poles, trees, you get the picture. For obvious reasons, those can't be farmed. They're not growing anything there. A tractor, a side-by-side, a person can't go through it, so we can't soil sample that. Part 2. Here's how I graded the work. The first section here, geometry, mass checks. Those are just the tools that we use to run the mass checks so we can catch more problems at once. Using those tools, we can fix 1 or 2 of the issues by field by field if we need to, but we could also run these other fixes that correct multiple issues at a time. So when I was grading, everybody passed these with flying colors, no problems. But I'm sure that's because I already did those checks. And I didn't purposefully throw any wrenches in there to mess anybody up. So maybe next time I will. The The second section here, I call them eyeball edits. And it is what it sounds like. You have to look at it. And this is the bulk of the editing work. So I rated the obstacles from minor to major. I took off fractions of points for the minor ones and 1 point each for the major ones. And I tried to keep notes on things, or I tried to keep good notes on things that I took off points for. So I also looked for orphan features, or those tiny little remnants that sometimes are left after cutting fields up. Most people are really good at catching those, and I didn't see any of those at all. Naming conventions were also done by me, so nobody got any points off there. Next time, I'm going to throw some wrenches in there too. The last category here was field history. There I focused on the temporal resolution checks, or more simply put, the field history that can be seen by looking at the historical imagery in Google Earth and the ones in QGIS. Here, we wanted to find and take out areas of the fields that were recently converted into arable land. So these are areas that were converted from native grass or forest, or, were covered by buildings anytime in the past 10 years. So those are not viable for the program. Any field part or field area that was left fallow for a year or more, those are also deemed ineligible. And CRP. So we didn't have any CRP in our practice data set, so everybody got off scot-free on that one too. Okie dokie, part 3. Here in part 3, I'm just going to do some edits. So this is our first field here, Boucher, Bobby Boucher. So in the red, you can see 2 submissions here, and they're not terribly bad, but I would like to show you a few things that make it a little bit easier next time you go to edit. So of course, we would like you to clean up the edges of the field as best you can. So you got to flip through imagery to see where things like the headlands here are. The Google satellite image is good, but it's showing bare dirt, and it's in a part of the season where there's not a lot of greenery. Obviously, this is winter. There's no leaf on. So here, the Bing satellite imagery is showing leaf on. So we have trees, we have grass, and you can see the areas that they are not farming. So we can see up here, this would be a minor obstruction, but they don't farm that close to the ditch. So using my reshape tool, this one here, I'm going to clean that area up. So I'm just drawing this line here, getting as close. I'm going to turn off snapping so that I won't be snapping to myself. I'm going to get as close as I can to the edge of the field where they're farming without having to get into that grass there. So you can see I cut the grass off. My boundaries will be green, your submissions are red. So this is just about as good as we would like you to get. So make sure you zoom in, that you get a good view, so you can get a good view of what's going on there. So you can put a couple of vertices down that are a little more accurate than if we were zoomed out. I'm using a method here where I'm shaving. So you can see this part comes in a little bit too far. So I just draw a line through it basically to shave it a little bit. And then of course, when we're done using that tool, we right click to end that operation. Another thing that I noticed that some of the submissions did is we didn't go all the way to the edge of where they're farming. So I'm flipping through some different imagery here to see if I can find the edge. And here the edge looks like it goes to about right there. So I'm going to draw this line to cut it right off the right of way of that road. Oops, there we go. Another thing is we want to get as close as we can to the edge, but without including those tree canopies. Like I said, they want us to remove those when and where we can. So the best thing to do might be to just draw your line for the edge and then go back and cut out the canopies. So I'm actually going to do that. So I'm going to find the edge of the field, run right along the edge, where the right of way of that road is. I'm going to turn these off. It's a little busy there. So I just find where these tree canopies are, cut them out individually. And I'm doing this quickly, but this is as accurate as it really needs to be. All right, so those canopies there are mostly cut out. Fix that one. Okay. Another thing is, I understand that it's hard sometimes to see these, but this is a shadow. And we know that because of all the shadows that the trees are casting here. But that shadow means that right there, and I'll turn this off too so you can see it better, that is a telephone pole. And so is that. And it's harder to even see there. It's impossible to see in this Google imagery here, but it's there. So using my Bing imagery where I can see the edges of the grass and the 1, 2, 3 telephone poles, 4, here's a hidden one. They're hard to see. So I went easy on people for those because if you don't do this a lot, you may not even see them at all. But yeah, they're there. So I'm just cutting those out. Just drawing these lines, shaving off these little areas where those obstructions are. And remember, it's always okay to swap imagery sources. It really helps to identify features of the area that you're working with there. And this is some mud that we would probably want to cut out, but I don't see it on any other imagery. There's a little bit here that you can see. It's not really muddy there, it's just not great. But we don't have any imagery of growth here, so we would have to turn to Google Earth to look at more imagery. So remember, for every field we want to check the historical imagery. So that's that button up there. And we want to go back 10 years from the current crop year, so 2013 for this one. And then I want to click through, see if there's anything that I missed from the first time that I went through. I just loaded the AOIs in here so I can get a good idea of where the fields are so that I could look at this as I went through with my editing. But for this one, I don't see anything over there that tends to be a problem, so I'm just leaving it. So that will all stay in there. Gotta select it. All right. So I would be done with this one, except for the tree canopies that I'm not going to do because it takes more time than we have. In this one, I saw one person that submitted actually just took the shape and used this button here, offset curve, to make it smaller, which is genius. But it doesn't account for things like this obstruction here on this side, or these tree canopies down here. So I applaud the effort and good use of the tool, but we still want to get a little more detailed than that. You can see the yellow is what I gave you guys. So first thing that we would do was we would need to cut it so that we have these different field parts. And I always cut into multiple features and then go back and merge them all when I'm done. So there's my cut. And then you don't have to have anything selected when you reshape. I can reshape more than one feature at a time like this, but that gets you in trouble pretty quickly. So what I usually do is I select the shape that I want to reshape. Whoops. Select the shape that I want to reshape, and then just perform the operation and save when I'm done. And what I'm doing right now is just shaving off parts that I don't need. And then I'll go in and get each one a little bit better. All right, and just like the other one, I'm going to the edge of the field, and then I'm going to check different imagery sources to make sure that I take out these tree canopies. And be sure not to include tree shadows as well as canopies, because a shadow is a shadow, it's not a tree. Breaking news. So I'm getting that one a little bit better, but mostly we want to just remove the canopies. And on this one, this is a good one here to talk about the compaction. So you can see the field entry exit is here, so I draw a bubble around it, and then I would do the same thing on this side. After I'm done shaping the edges of the field and removing tree canopies and things, I want to look for these areas of compaction. And I like to round off my corners. So I know a lot of people didn't look very hard for these compaction areas, but these are things that a new wants us to remove, so we remove them. All right, so that one's rough, but it's a good illustration of these different areas where there are field compaction from entry exit. All right, so when I first looked at this field, the first thing that I saw was that it had some drainage going across this eastern section of this main field part. So we do want to remove those. So skipping ahead, assuming that I've cleaned up the borders as well as I could, I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And it's good to zoom in, get a good view of what you're removing there. But I just gave it a little tail there because we don't want to remove anything that doesn't need to be removed, obviously. But I'm coming down here to the bottom, and you can see it branches off into a couple of different parts, and that's okay. You can just remove those separately by cutting. So I would cut there, and then use my reshape tool again to reshape that corner. The entry exits on this field some of them are a little more hidden, and this one also has some telephone poles on the side, but this one has a good right-of-way for the road that most people avoided. Here you can see the vegetation itself in the Google imagery, which is very good resolution, so I'll use that. I hope I had this selected. There we go. So we want to remove those major obstacles like that. I would also want to flip through some of this imagery to see if I can find another entry exit. I would assume there would be one. Oh, there it is. So we want to remove that. So that's not completely done, but I think you get the picture on that one. And of course, when I'm done with all these, I would take all the Breckenridge ones and merge them together using this tool here. And so when you go back to it, it's all one feature. And then we would want to calculate the area of everything, of course. And we should keep doing this every 1 or 2 fields or so, just to be sure that we're getting correct acreages that we're supposed to have. So this one caught a few people. So obviously this is native. This is pasture, native grass, fallow, whatever you want to call it. It was not active as an arable field, so they were not farming a crop on it. Of course, we would want to look through our imagery. So we're looking at Edgemon here. We want to look at the past few years, and this is 2020, where this field is fallow or pasture or whatever. But it looks like this field in the past 10 years has always been pasture, so this field is ineligible. This one, I think everybody that did this one caught that these people here expanded their yard. It looks like they have some dog houses or rooster houses or whatever those are. But this was farmed, but they reclaimed this as yard space. Here's another entry exit for these 2 different field parts. And I think there was also a good bit of mud. Yeah, there's some muddy spots. Here's another field entry exit. There was an obstacle right here that some missed, but some got. And it's hard to see, but you do see that they farm around it. So they planted around it, obviously. But yeah, I have no idea what this thing is. It's not casting a big shadow. I would assume it's a pump or something. And of course, over here you have entry exits for every part. Because these are separate parts, they don't just roll through these grassy areas all the time, although it looks like they sometimes do. You can see here where they rolled through it, but the entry exit points are easily viewable if you flip through multiple imagery. This one here, a lot of people miss this drainage here, but if you flip through the imagery, it becomes more clear. It's not terribly bad, but it is visible. And here you can see it's formed a trench in the field that they had to plant around. So they couldn't even drive this tractor through it to plant. Or maybe one of their other tractors. But This is your obvious entry exit there. Oh, here it is. Pam and Gary. All right, Pam and Gary was a difficult one. There was a nice muddy spot over here that some caught and some didn't. You can see that has drainage into it as well. There's a muddy spot down there too, but it wasn't terribly bad, so not too bad. There are some entry exits that are hidden, so that makes it more difficult. When you flip through some imagery, you're able to see them better. I didn't take off any points for anybody for these entry exits because they're really hard to see. On some imagery, you can see where they come from this road up here to the north and go through to the fields, following the creek or crossing the creek, but they're really hard to see. The only ones that were easier to see were the ones that were like over here. I'm gonna flip through. So here's an entry exit here. And you can see I left this over here, this area that would need to be cut out, which is easy to see on this imagery, but not on all the imagery. Well, maybe not. It's pretty easy to see, but one or two missed it. So the harder thing to see on this one really is are the poles down here. You can see this edge really well in this imagery, but on other imagery it's not as easy to see, and there are some poles that are in there, so you got to cut that out. Here's one. It's a pole with a transformer on it, I think. All right. So the tools that I've mostly been using are the select tool to select whatever I want to edit. The reshape tool is mostly what I've been using because these features already exist, so I don't need to digitize new ones or add a new feature. And then the split features and merge features tools I used a lot to cut up these filled parts that were that needed to be cut. This one also had this right here that a few people missed, but that's just some drainage there. Alrighty, let's also go over this one add ring tool right quick while we're here. So if we have a muddy spot like this that's in the middle of the field and it's shown across different imagery sources, this one's not, but this drainage is. But let's say this patch here of poor growth was very poor and it was consistent across imagery, and we would need to cut it out. You just go up here or make sure your feature that you want to add the ring to is selected, click add ring, and then just draw around whatever it is you're excluding, and then you're done. Just right click to end, and that's that. Make sure you save. All right, that'll be it for this. If you have any questions, feel free to message me or send me an email. Until next time, see ya.